I've spent the last 3 years building a plagiarism detection system, tailored for my university, not Turnitin, not Grammarly. This was mine. I wrote every line of code, trained it on obscure blog posts, Reddit rants, and paper mills no one else tracks. I designed it not just to flag, but to understand, and I was proud of it. That Thursday afternoon felt like any other. My students filed out, leaving behind the usual scent of overbrewed coffee and deadline panic. I was wiping down the whiteboard when my phone buzzed. New flag. I opened the app without much thought these days. It was rare to get a false positive. 94% match. I blinked. That's unusually high. The student ID popped up. Since Chambers. The name sat oddly familiar on my tongue. But I didn't dwell on it, not at first. I just did what I always do. I pulled up the submission, cross-checked the source, paragraph by paragraph. It was all there, a Reddit thread from 2020, pasted nearly verbatim into a paper, titled Civil Liberties in the Digital Age. The student didn't even bother to rephrase. It was lazy, but what caught my breath wasn't the plagiarism. It was the last name, Chambers. I opened the faculty database. William Chambers, sophomore, political science major, GPA 3. And there it was, guardian, Dean Randall Chambers, my boss's son. That moment was like biting into something sweet and finding glass inside. My stomach turned, not because I was scared, but because I knew this wouldn't be handled like every other case. Knew what it would mean to press flag as violation. Still, I clicked. I flagged it. I didn't hesitate. But I didn't feel righteous either. Just tired. I had built this system to make grading fairer, to eliminate bias. It had worked for 3 semesters without pushback. Until now, before shutting down my computer, I did something I hadn't done in months. I backed up the logs. I copied the report, the match, the timestamp, saved everything onto a small USB drive. I kept hidden under the lining of my satchel. A habit I'd picked up back when I still cared about tenure politics. Then I sat there for a while. The hallway outside was quiet. The sun had dipped behind the administration building, casting a long shadow across my desk. I remember thinking, this is the moment. The one you look back on and say, that's when it changed. Not when I built the system, not when it caught him, but when I didn't unflag it. The next morning, my office door was already ajar. Strange I always lock it. Inside. Everything looked untouched at first glance, but my desktop was on, even though I'd powered it down the night before, and the folder labeled Flagged Reports was no longer on the home screen. I didn't panic. I checked the logs, accessed at 7 a.m. by an admin account I didn't recognize. Someone had gone looking, and not quietly. At 8, Serfofer, I received an email from the provost's assistant. No subject line. Just, you're expected in Dean Chambers' office at 9 sharp. I don't remember walking there. I just remember the carpet. Thin, red, overly clean. The kind you find in hotels that pretend to be better than they are. The dean didn't look up when I walked in. He kept typing for a full 30 seconds. Then, without smiling, he gestured for me to sit. Dr. Strong, he said. It's come to my attention that one of our systems flagged a submission by my son. No denial, no accusation, just the soft weight of power, pretending to be a conversation. Yes, I replied. The match was 94%. The source is public. It wasn't even masked. He folded his hands. You built this system yourself. Correct. I did. He nodded. And has it undergone formal review, legal, ethical, academic standards? It was a setup. The system had been approved in writing, but that wasn't the point. This wasn't about compliance. It was about control. I documented every step. I said calmly, your office signed off 6 months ago. He sighed, like I disappointed him. There are politics here. Emily, you've created something. Impressive. But discretion matters. William is under a great deal of pressure. This incident could derail his entire academic future. I didn't derail anything, I said. He did. That was when his face changed. The veneer dropped. "You will not escalate this," he said flatly. "In fact, you're to remove the flag and archive the report, effective immediately." I didn't answer. "I'm also recommending you take a semester off," he added. "Sabbatical. Recharge. Clear your head." It wasn't a suggestion. I left without speaking. My hands were cold by the time I got outside. The air smelled like burned leaves and old concrete late fall on a campus that suddenly didn't feel like mine. Back at my apartment, I opened my laptop and plugged in the USB drive. I stared at it for a long time. My system had done its job. I had done mine. But the institution, the one that paid me, praised me, published me, had decided the rules only apply until they apply to someone that matters. That night, I typed a new folder name, Failsafe, and I started making copies, not just the Chambers case, everything. The email came 2 days later. Subject: Faculty Wellness Initiative. Body: as part of our ongoing commitment to faculty well-being, Dr. Emily Strong will be participating in a university-funded sabbatical beginning next week. Please direct all academic inquiries regarding Comp 402 to Dr. Mark Levin. No mention of why. No farewell. Just a quiet erasure, wrapped in faux concern. It was sent to every faculty listserv, every department group thread. My inbox was full of polite confusion. "Are you okay? Did something happen? Hope you're enjoying some time off." I didn't answer any of them. They hadn't removed me from campus yet, so I still had access to my office. But when I swiped my ID at the computer lab the next morning, the screen blinked red. Access denied. By noon, my university email account was frozen. My name disappeared from the staff directory by evening. I didn't shout. I didn't go to the press. I didn't even post some cryptic status update online. I simply watched as the institution I had served quietly folded me out of existence, like I was a tab on a spreadsheet, a simple delete function. The next day, the system flagged another paper, not from William this time, but from someone in the biology department. The same signature pattern, high-level phrasing, mismatched citations, a 92% match to a proprietary database of ghost-written research. But I couldn't log in anymore. The system still worked. I'd made sure of that, built redundancies, background logging, automated alerts. The code was alive, and it was loyal to the principles I gave it. But I was no longer allowed to act on what it found. That was the moment I realized. They hadn't just silenced me. They were trying to own the system. I could feel the edges of my purpose fraying. All that work, all those nights tuning the detection thresholds, building transparency into the UI, designing ethics flags into the reporting logic. And now, it was in the hands of the very people it was meant to hold accountable. I kept quiet, but I didn't stay still. I created a mirror server, isolated, encrypted, offshore. I recompiled the core detection engine and renamed it Truth Trace. It would live outside the university's firewall, outside their funding, outside their approval. And I wouldn't sell it. I wouldn't license it. I'd give it away to professors, to schools that couldn't afford expensive tools, to students who wanted to verify their own work before submission. I wouldn't fight their institution. I'd replace it, piece by piece, not with politics, not with noise, with precision, with facts, with code that didn't care whose name sat on which office door. I didn't announce Truth Trace. I just released it. No press release, no splashy launch video. I posted the repository link on a small, private forum for ethics-driven educators, the kind of place where people still debate the difference between citation and attribution. Like it matters, within 48 hours, the tool had been forked 19 times. Within a week, there were messages in my inbox from professors at mid-tier colleges, community instructors, even 2 high school teachers in Michigan. They were grateful, not just for the tool, but for the fact that it didn't ask them to pay for oversight, that it didn't phone home to a private company, that it wasn't built to generate risk scores, but actual accountability. TruthTrace didn't just flag plagiarism, it showed the lineage of a sentence. It taught that's what scared them the most. Back on campus, or rather, in the sanitized emails I still had access to via an old alumni account. I saw the ripples start. There was confusion when a flagged student in another department cited TruthTrace as the tool that caught their own error. A junior professor requested a workshop on it. IT pushed back, not university approved, but word spread. Someone posted a video on TikTok. This AI told me I plagiarized, and it was right, and I actually learned something. Hundreds of thousands of views. The university's name wasn't mentioned, but the watermark on the student's screen showed our campus login page. 2 days later, I got a text message from an unknown number. Please stop this. Let it go. No name. But I recognized the cadence. They were losing control, and they knew it. But I wasn't trying to destroy them. That's the part people always misunderstand about justice. It's not about revenge. It's about correction. Quiet. Deliberate. Cumulative correction. I received an invitation from a small liberal arts college in Oregon. They asked if I would give a remote talk about algorithmic ethics. Nothing formal, just a Zoom session with their faculty. I accepted. At the end of the call, one professor asked if I'd be willing to help them implement TruthTrace across their core writing curriculum. I said yes. The next morning, I checked the server logs. Installations in 6 new states, 2 overseas. The system was doing its job again. But this time, not under a nameplate or a funding memo. It was doing what I built it to do, restore integrity, without needing permission to do so. I wasn't back in the classroom. I wasn't back on payroll, but I was back in motion. And the more they tried to erase me, the more they highlighted the gap I'd left behind. 3 weeks after TruthTrace started circulating, the dean announced a voluntary early retirement. There was no ceremony, no reception, just a 4-line memo from the Board of Trustees, thanking him for his years of distinguished service. In the hallway chatter, I could still overhear through faculty listserv leaks. No one seemed surprised, only quiet relief, like a storm passing. But the cracks had already widened long before he stepped down. It started when a senior in the political science department appealed a grade, citing TruthTrace in their defense, only to find out the system had been flagged as unauthorized software. The story leaked to the campus paper. They ran a quiet piece. Nothing flashy, titled, "When the Tools Work Too Well." Then came the faculty senate vote, a motion to formally review how academic integrity cases were being handled, especially those tied to students with administrative affiliations. It passed, narrowly. The provost resigned the following week, said she wanted to pursue opportunities in the private sector. I didn't believe that for a second. I kept my head down through all of it. But every time another article went up, every time TruthTrace was mentioned in a tweet, every time a professor requested access to the repository, I felt something shift, not triumph, not vindication, but a kind of calibration, like the machine was correcting itself, like entropy was, for once, working in reverse. I never asked to be reinstated. I never filed a formal grievance. That wasn't the point. I didn't want an apology or a press release or an email from the new interim dean. What I wanted was already happening. The system that pushed me out was now twisting under the weight of its own contradiction. They had endorsed integrity in writing, in policy, in commencement speeches, but tried to suppress it when it became inconvenient. Now, they were paying for that gap. In the background, TruthTrace kept growing. An open-source community had formed around it. Programmers refining the engine, educators translating the UI into other languages, even students submitting examples for future detection sets. It was no longer mine. That's what made it powerful. Late one night, I received an anonymous email. No greeting, no signature. just a PDF attachment. It was a faculty meeting transcript from a closed session I hadn't known took place. Page 4, line 12. In hindsight, removing doctor. Strong may have been. Premature. I didn't smile, but I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop, made tea, and opened a new notebook. First page, blank, waiting, because something had ended yes, but that only meant something else had begun. I never went back to the university, not out of bitterness, just clarity. Some doors, once closed, should stay that way, not because there's nothing behind them, but because the space beyond them no longer fits who you are. I kept teaching, though first as a guest lecturer, then by invitation, Zoom calls, panel discussions, workshops with schools I'd never heard of in towns I'd never visited. No office, no title, no parking spot, just the work. Truth Trace grew faster than I expected, not viral, not in the way media chases things, but steady, trusted. It didn't promise to stop cheating. It promised to recognize patterns, to show students where they were echoing someone else's voice without realizing it, to teach before it punished. That was the point. One of the first adopters, a literature professor in Vermont, wrote me an email I still keep saved. Your system didn't catch my student cheating. It helped her see how much she was hiding behind other people's words. She rewrote the paper. It wasn't brilliant, but it was hers. That meant more than any award I've ever received. Eventually, a nonprofit approached me. They offered to sponsor Truth Trace, not to profit from it, but to protect it legally, technically, ethically. I agreed, on one condition. It had to stay open source, always. No one should ever have to pay for fairness. Meanwhile, the university began advertising a new transparency initiative in its brochures. They never mentioned my name, never cited my work, but I could see the fingerprints, the phrasing, the philosophy, the sudden interest in student-centered integrity. I didn't need credit. The goal was never credit. It was accountability. One afternoon, while cleaning out old boxes, I found the original USB drive, the one I used to save the William Chambers report. It was still taped under the lining of my satchel. I held it for a long moment, then tossed it into the donation bin. I didn't need it anymore. The proof had already done its job, and so had I. The campus changed, not because of outrage, not because of scandal, but because truth, when made visible, does not go back into the dark quietly. That was enough for me. It still is.